I will be exploring the link between emotional intelligence and bullying in children and adolescents. So, is increased emotional intelligence connected to less bullying behaviors? Studies have shown that equipping children with prosocial skills decreases the possibility that they will engage in antisocial behaviors such as bullying in adolescence and adulthood. And a study done in 2015 found significant positive outcomes for anti-bullying interventions taught to young children. The effects of the anti-bullying interventions for older children were found to be less effective. Therefore, it may be more beneficial to begin anti-bullying interventions in early childhood rather than beginning their implementation when children are older. The creation of effective interventions geared toward fostering emotional intelligence is crucial because it may alter the course of these problematic behavioral patterns during early childhood. So this literature review will further explore the possible connection between emotional intelligence and bullying. So is there a clear operational definition of emotional intelligence? In 1990, Peter Salovey and Jack Mayer coined the term emotional intelligence, and it refers to the ability to identify and manage one's own emotions, as well as the emotions of others. And a significant issue in the development of this area of psychology has been establishing the clear operational definition of emotional intelligence. And the literature still lacks a common language that researchers and practitioners can adhere to when it comes to emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence has essentially been conceptualized from two different approaches, as a trait or as a mental ability. And it's conceptualized as a trait, and it's measured through self-report questionnaires, or a mental ability, which refers to an actual ability measured by performance tests which have correct and incorrect answers. So this has proven to be controversial because some researchers have argued that it's not possible to objectify emotional information and formulate criteria in order to judge a response as right or wrong. So while there is disagreement among psychologists as to what constitutes true emotional intelligence, it's generally agreed that it includes these skills: emotional awareness, the ability to harness those emotions and apply them to tasks like problem solving, and the ability to manage emotions. So can emotional intelligence be taught? The idea that emotional intelligence is malleable has been widely accepted in the literature, and therefore so is the notion that interventions can help with increasing it. A variety of school-based interventions for bullying prevention through social emotional learning, such as the Promoting Alternative Thinking Strategies program, or the PAST curriculum, have been developed and subjected to empirical review, most of which have yielded really positive results. And among intervention programs designed to promote educational and emotional intelligence and include its outcome measures in the supporting research base, the PAST curriculum is one of the most widely known, and its implementation has led to significant improvements in students' abilities in areas such as discussing emotional experiences and engaging in prosocial behaviors. But with the scarcity of research, particularly in the relationship between bullying and emotional intelligence, it's difficult to measure whether emotional intelligence has truly been taught and is the direct cause of the change in behaviors, or whether other factors have caused the improvement of behaviors. So on to some of the empirical studies. There are more studies cited in my actual research paper, but they essentially show that children and adolescents who had higher scores of emotional intelligence were better able to manage conflict and less likely to engage in bullying behaviors. So a study done in 2011 with 565 elementary students showed that higher scores of trait emotional intelligence were related to more peer nominations for prosocial behaviors and lower scores on self-reported bullying behaviors. Also consistent with the findings of other cited studies, males obtained lower emotional intelligence scores and exhibited greater difficulty in understanding the perspectives of others. Males were also more associated with bullying behaviors than females. In a study done in 2015, trait emotional intelligence among over 2,000 pre-adolescent students were evaluated, and for this study, the students were also asked to evaluate their teachers. The results demonstrated that teacher and management had a significant effect on bullying behaviors. In relation to bullying and aggression, the results show that positive teacher management was linked to a lower level of aggression, whereas negligent teacher management was linked to higher levels of bullying behaviors among students. So a possible explanation about the connection between trait emotional intelligence and teacher management is the behavior that the teacher provides for observational learning purposes. So some teachers could display behaviors that influence the abilities of students to identify, manage, and express their emotions and understand the emotions of others. And this could affect the students' abilities to effectively cope with conflict and therefore resort to bullying behaviors, among other aggressive behaviors. And in a study in 2017, it was shown that trait emotional intelligence was negatively associated with bullying in males and females, which is also supported in previously cited studies. And so high emotional intelligence was also negatively associated with victimizations in males specifically. Therefore, males with higher emotional intelligence were not only less likely to engage in bullying behaviors, but also less likely to be the victim of bullying behaviors. And in a study done in 2013, relationships were examined between emotional intelligence skills, such as stress management skills and interpersonal skills, and involvement in violence and physical bullying. And the results showed that interpersonal skills and stress management skills demonstrated significant bivariate relationships with each of the bullying and violence outcomes. So those who had the tools to manage stress and effectively communicate were less likely to engage in bullying and violent behaviors. So it's highly likely that it seems that it sheds light on the possibility that students were influenced by others when it came to their abilities to identify, manage, and express their own emotions and understand the emotions of others. It's possible that children who are regularly exposed to individuals who have heightened emotional intelligence may be able to be equipped with skills to prevent bullying and other violent behaviors. So here's some empirical study limitations. In general, most of the studies exploring the relationship between emotional intelligence and bullying focus on older adolescents and adults. There's a scarcity of research focused on young children and adolescents. And there's no studies that involve a longitudinal design, and it would be helpful to examine whether the relationship lasts for a longer duration of time. And bidirectionality of effects needs to be taken into account when it comes to correlational and cross-sectional research. So for example, in the cited studies, the implication is that lower emotional intelligence leads to the development of problem behaviors, such as bullying. But the reverse could also be true. The development of problem behaviors could lead to lower emotional intelligence. And another important limitation is that most of the studies assessed use self-report measures of emotional intelligence, trait emotional intelligence specifically, and there's a scarcity of studies using ability tests. It would be beneficial for the research to focus on incorporating more performance-based tests to compare the results. It would also be beneficial for future research to be conducted across various cultures, situations, and locations, as most of them were in the school environment. And so, finally, my last points are about implications for future research. It would be valuable for future research to focus on the development and implementation of anti-bullying interventions designed to increase emotional intelligence in children and adolescents. It would also be important for future research to focus on which specific aspects of emotional intelligence would be incorporated into interventions to help reduce bullying, since emotional intelligence skills are shown to lead to success in a variety of ways. And more research is also needed to determine which aspects of emotional intelligence specifically are connected to a reduction in bullying and how they can best be taught. And elements of social cognitive theory can be incorporated into the interventions. Specifically, it would be important for interventions to be geared toward the entire school, so not only for students, but also teachers and other school officials. And this is consistent with social cognitive theory because the entire school community would be involved, and there will be more opportunities to utilize modeling and observational learning techniques. And it's worth noting that implementation of any intervention may pose challenges such as the expense of the intervention, making the time in school curricula to teach it, and training school officials to teach the intervention to students. It would be beneficial for researchers to focus on potential challenges to implementing these interventions in schools and possible solutions to the challenges.